So, welcome to another episode of Menable Matters with me, Steve Whitten. We are commemorating Mental Health Awareness Week 2023 with some special programs in association with Jardine Motors Group. And I am absolutely delighted today to be joined by a key member of their team, Matt Karim. Matt, how are you, sir?
Morning, Stephen. Very well, thank you. And yourself?
Yeah, I'm absolutely brilliant. Thank you.
Good.
And yeah, so just in good old fashioned Menable Matters style, could I ask you to tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, what you do, and
Yeah.
all that great stuff? And if you can manage to make that last about 30 minutes, that'd be brilliant.
Trust me, I can try for you. There's no questions there.
No, I am
So,
joking.
so my name's Matt Karim. I'm a business development manager for part of the Jardine Motor Group. I work directly with Audi UK. I've been in the motor trade for coming up 20 years nearly, and with Jardine probably nearly 20 years. Also, so that's a great time. Enjoyed my time with it as well. Single man, no children. Why I'm smiling, I guess. A lot less stresses than some people out there, I'm guessing.
Right. Okay.
But yeah, so that's me in a nutshell, realistically. 45 years old this year. My God. The white beard's coming through, and I'm wearing the silver fox with pride.
Okay, well, if you're watching this on YouTube, you'll be able to see that. But on if you're listening to us on Spotify, then I can testify for the fact that you have got rather a miraculous looking white beard going on there, Matt. That's pretty good.
Thank you, thank you. I take pride in it. As he flicks his mustache.
Yeah, look at that. Yeah, absolutely. Now, obviously, the theme for Mental Health Awareness Week this year is anxiety.
Okay.
And you know, you've spent nearly a fair chunk of your life, haven't you, in a busy automotive business.
Mm-hmm.
So I dare say that you yourself and people around you, and you know, you mentioned that those of us with children perhaps have some different sets of anxiety.
Absolutely.
So in your time then, and we talked about this a little bit before we started recording, what would you say you've seen, or maybe you've had to deal with yourself
So
around all of that in the industry?
I think certainly in the early days of industry in the motor trade, we wasn't so focused on well-being. We've certainly seen changes in that, you know, and that's a great step forward. But the anxiety that I used to see salespeople actually aiming for targets, meeting a deadline, getting the customer service to the correct level, internal pressures as well. You know, these things happen on a day-to-day business situation, but also on personal levels as well. You know, I'm quite a gregarious, friendly, outgoing kind of guy, so people tend to come to me for advice, for a chat, for a conversation, and I'm always happy to do that. And I guess from that, I really wanted to learn a little bit more about um, mental health.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and certainly from the biggest learning point that I got was originally I thought it was just a case of you've either got mental health or you haven't. And the fact of the matter is that's not the case. And of course,
Yeah.
anxiety comes well within that. You know, you've either got good mental health or you've got not so good mental health.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think being able to recognize that both in the industry with my colleagues, whether it be anxiety, just by a look, just by an aggression, whichever way that we come through it, and also adopting that into my personal life as well.
Mm.
Um, it certainly ranks me as a better, more understanding colleague, friend, son, uncle, brother. You know,
Yeah. Yeah. I get
um,
that.
so I think anxiety is something that I had never experienced before, and I'm very lucky to say that until lockdown. I live alone, and I was sitting in my kitchen, and I was watching a bit of TV, and all of a sudden I got this. I had a flash of the TV advert of a heart attack, if you like, where they pull that belt across your chest.
Oh, right. Oh,
I
yes,
sat
I remember
there,
the one. Yeah.
yeah, and I sat there and I thought, oh, blimey, that's a bit tight. What's going on here? And I realized I thought I was having a heart attack, and then my breathing got a little bit erratic, and then I realized I was actually having a bit of an anxiety attack. Absolutely new to me, never experienced it. And thankfully, I'd actually had a little bit of training going on, a little bit of understanding about how to deal with an anxiety attack, not being able or trying to deal with one at least. So I kind of controlled my breathing, tried not to hyperventilate, and actually being able to recognize that that's what I was having. It's not a heart attack. It was just that moment of anxiety, that moment of stress. And it was about what was going on in the world. I actually found I was watching the news at the time, and I think it was the news, and I'm sure you remember yourself, Steve, looking back at that point, you know, the news was really a doom and gloom story constantly. So actually, I made a physical decision that if that's making me feel that way, I need to cut it out of my life. And that's kind of what I did. And I've actually adopted that moving forward. And I always say to anybody, you know, if there's something that's making you feel anxious, sad, anything, if it's not a positive thought, then how can you deal with it? Now, don't get me wrong, I deleted something out of my life, i.e., the news at 6 o'clock, to help me with that, and that solved my issue. That's not possible for everybody, and I'm totally aware of that. And that again was
Yeah.
a real igniter for me to think, actually, how can I help people moving forward in a very similar situation?
Yeah. So Matt, I was going to ask you actually, because you mentioned earlier that you're quite an outgoing, gregarious person.
Yeah,
You could see that, and you and I kind of clicked when we met at the DEI conference back in November.
yeah.
Um, and I think you commented on my red trousers, actually, didn't you? So,
Great pair of trousers, mate.
are
Great
they?
trousers.
Well, they're.
I just can't get away with it. I look like Santa Claus.
Oh well, the worst things could happen, couldn't they? But
Ah,
but I was going to say, and you mentioned it actually there, just at the point I was thinking it. You talked about lockdown and being on your own and being
yeah.
isolated and so on.
Mhm.
Now it's probably very easy to think that people who are anxious quite often are introverts or people who don't share stuff. But
Mhm.
actually, those of us that are quite out there and gregarious, we can be susceptible to that as well, can't we? In the way that you've just
Absolutely.
described.
Absolutely,
Because
Steve.
with the highs come the lows, right?
Absolutely. And I think what you'll find with a lot of people, especially in our industry where we are on stage, we're talking to customers and there's pressure to do the right thing for the customer, the right thing for the business, the right thing for you. I think you'll find a lot of salespeople in particular that I've seen or customer facing members of the teams do wear a mask.
Right.
And it's a real shame because sometimes you can't see past that mask to see
Hmm.
actually what's going on behind it because that individual doesn't want you to see it. They don't want to know what you are. It's a barrier, if you like.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely. In answer to your question, it's people will only show you what you want to what they want to show you, if that makes
Mm.
sense.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, I mean, people do hide behind a smile sometimes.
Yeah.
And that
So how did
smile,
how do you navigate that then? I mean, you said that you did things like turning off the news, which is all doom and gloom in it, but what else did you do? Because if you're an outgoing person and then you're forced into this sort of isolation period,
yeah.
that's out of your control. So what did you do, and what would you suggest others do?
Um, I think keeping communication levels open was superb. I have to say, from a Jardine perspective, that my team members knew that I lived alone, and there were certainly teams throughout the manufacturers, not just with Audi, that would pick up the team's call when we had access to teams and the phone when we had them. Just to say, how's things, Matt? Are you okay? And I've got to be honest with you, I really enjoyed lockdown. I can't say I didn't, Stephen, because I'm really lucky. Whereas I am comfortable in my own company, but that's not something that happened overnight. That's something that I've had to learn over a number of years. These things don't come easy,
Right.
and until you're absolutely comfortable with yourself,
Mm.
or at least 80% comfortable with yourself, it's it's quite a relief when you do become that point where you can and again answer to your question where I'd stop watching the news. I found there was also people that was in my life that weren't necessarily bringing bringing more negatives than positives, or should I say takers rather than anything else. And I also made a decision there that actually, if a person is in my life that isn't bringing any quality to my life, any value to my life, this might sound really quite cutthroat realistically, but I was just looking out for myself in this case, my own mental health, if you like, that I
Mm.
take them out of my life. Um, and again, I'm not suggesting for any one moment that everybody can do that or should do that, may I add. it's down to being comfortable in yourself to be able to do that. And I'm very fortunate to be able to say I can.
Yeah, and that, do you know what? That's a really, really good point, but that's a real toughie, isn't it? For, perhaps again, something that's easy for those of us that are confident and out there and gregarious. But if
Yeah,
that's not your style, to, to think about sort of cutting people out, if you like, those that are
yeah.
not serving you well is going to be a toughie. So, I mean, how did you go about that then? I mean, you don't have to name names, obviously, but
No,
how
not
do
not at
you
all.
identify, the type of people that weren't serving your
Yeah, absolutely.
requirements?
So I think from my perspective, I'm quite uh, a giving person,
Mm,
and I expect a lot from people, because I put a lot into them.
hmm
And I think you just got to a point where the cup was starting to overflow, and I had to deal with something. And also, there's an element of pride to do that, where I had to safeguarding is probably the best word I can use for that.
Right.
I know very well if I carried down on that path with this individual, that it would take me to a quite dark place. And I felt I'll talk about one particular reason with an ex partner where it was a case of if I don't do something about this now, I'm going to get dark. And I found myself becoming quite introverted in many ways. Because let's face it, we all know overthinking kills happiness, or at least it can do. And
Mhm.
that's where I was at.
Right.
So I had to make a decision that I wasn't going to allow this person to affect my mental health any longer.
Yeah.
And again, Stephen, it's very easy for me to say that because I'm there, which is another reason why I wanted to come and talk to you today,
hmm
and certainly do everything I do with group as well, because actually I can share my experiences with people. Anybody that's dealing with any kind of anxiety, whether they're dealing with any stresses in their life, sometimes they just need somebody to talk to, a
Yeah.
sounding board.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I knew that although it worked for me, it's not going to work for everybody. So I
Yeah.
didn't want to turn around to somebody and say, "Oh, do this, and this," because that's not the case.
Mm.
This isn't an instruction. Everybody's mental health is like their physical health. It's very personal to them, and
Yeah.
actually, they'll only ever share what they want to share with you. And actually, it's more of a listening board. My colleague will always say to me when I'm on the phone, I say, "Oh, give me some feedback on that meeting I've just had." He'll say, well, Matt, you've got two ears and one mouth. And he's absolutely right. Listen to people because sometimes that's all they need is a sounding board.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
actually being able to give them structural, beneficial, I'd like to say advice, but I don't think it is. I think it's more of a conversation point, being able to talk through their issues and knowing that somebody's there to listen for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's massively important. And again, I do that on a day to day basis. I mean, in our offices, we can walk around our centres and I can see if somebody's not their usual bubbly self. And actually, it's just a case of, hello, John, are you all right? Yeah, I'm good, thanks. Are you? Yeah, yeah, I'm really well, thanks. You sure everything's okay? You're not your normal self? Because first impression is that if somebody says, yeah, I'm fine, it's that mask as well. But just saying, well, your normal bubbly self. Is there anything you want me to talk to you about, or I'm here for you? That's, to me, quite important to me.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. I mean, I've written down actually. There's three things that come out of what you've just said there, but I'm gonna, which I'll come back to. But what you've just touched on there brings up for me another challenge, which is that those of us that are typically bubbly, gregarious out there, and as you've said, we often do use that as a bit of a mask. It's very
Absolutely.
easy for you to spot in other people like us that actually they're perhaps not a bit as bubbly as they are.
Exactly right.
Well, what about those people though that aren't naturally bubbly, that are maybe a little bit more introvert? How can you, have you got any ideas or thoughts on how you can spot that they're not having a good day?
Um,
Because they're
yeah, I
normally pretty
mean,
quiet anyway, aren't they?
absolutely. And I think realistically, that just comes down to the human condition of talking to people.
Right.
Don't just walk past somebody, say good morning. I always take, whenever I come into a business, I will always go in and say good morning to the staff that I come into contact with.
Yeah.
And actually, sorry, the team members. And actually, when you do say that, you get to know people.
Mm.
What I found is
And
that
we can all do that, right? I mean, that's not, the behest of someone who's a manager, is it? That's everyone's
absolutely, no,
responsibility.
it's everybody's responsibility to be human.
Yeah,
We're in this together.
yeah, yeah.
And actually, the teamwork isn't just about how the business is working;
Mm.
it's about how we support each other outside of business as well,
Yeah,
and making
yeah,
sure that we can help each other. So it's a really good question that you're asking, Stephen, and actually being able to articulate it to tell you how I do that is quite a difficult one because it's almost like a sixth sense, isn't it? It's when you know somebody, you know their body language, or they're a bit red in the face, or you can hear they're a bit, they're slamming of something down on a desk. So, I mean, okay, it's just asking the question. I think that's the thing for me. Now, you know, my colleague that I work with on a constant basis, I'll say, it's a bit of a joke between us. I'll say, "How you doing?" And he'll say, "I'm all right." I said, "Are you sure you're all right?" And it's a bit of a giggle between the two of us. But actually, he knows the intention is there. We work together on a day-to-day basis. So, being able to say that to our team members and just checking in to make sure they're all right
yeah,
is
yeah,
the biggest thing. And I think that's the thing. Don't get me wrong. You're not going to see somebody crying and find out that they've done this, and this. It's just a case of somebody needs to be listening to them at some point.
yeah. Get to know them and understand them, right? I mean,
Yeah, I think so.
I always use the example of now of how we kind of use the phrase "as happy as Larry."
Yeah,
Well, in the first dealership I worked in, the parts manager there was called Larry, and he was the most miserable person I've ever met. So, so I always think, one, who gave what? How come Larry is the benchmark for happiness? So who gave him that responsibility? And secondly, this particular Larry just reminds me of those people that, and I say he was miserable, and I think actually looking back on it, what probably people didn't do was approach him or get close to him, because he kind of gave off this aura of, just kind of leave me alone. I'm just in my own world. And I still think we have a few people like that, and that's
absolutely.
fine if they want to be like that, that's fine. But how do we show them that we're supporting them as well?
I think we're going to remember, Stephen, and I think this ties into the earlier conversation that actually is that guy, that lady, that lad, girl, are they actually wearing a mask as well? You
Absolutely,
know,
yeah. And that's the one
and
they understand, right? For you and me,
exactly
it's
right.
being jovial and jokey. For them, it's shutting down.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I think it's like any situation. I mean, I'm fortunate enough with the role that I do that I can um, understand people's personalities and tone down, tone up, kind of, and that's a skill in itself. Nobody, not everybody
100%.
can do that.
Yeah, it is.
And some people can't. And actually, some people are intimidated by that. The fact that I am loud and gregarious and enjoy what I'm doing. I have to understand that some people are intimidated by it. It frustrates them. They don't like it because it's just not their style. Um, and that's where I have to mirror people. And I think that's where I get the best out of the people is by actually mirroring them. Let's keep this on an even keel. It's an eye to eye contact. If you want to talk, I'm here. It's on your grounds, though. I'm not telling you you've got to do anything,
Yeah, yeah.
but it's actually having that empathy. I think that's probably my biggest asset when it comes to this is empathy. I
Mm.
can empathize. I can associate with situations, or a lot of situations that are people going through. But like I said earlier, it's about listening and just being there.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, do you know what I was going to say as well? That just like we use Larry as the example, of the sort of introvert guy and who keeps himself to himself. I think, sometimes, and you've just touched on it, the likes of you and I that are a bit more out there, that actually can be a barrier in itself, can't it? And people
Absolutely,
won't approach you because they either think you're not going to take them seriously, or you're so energetic that actually sort of puts them off. So,
absolutely.
and then you answered the question really by saying it's about empathy and understanding that you just got to be yourself and adapt and
Exactly
flex for
right.
each other.
I think my biggest thing at the moment, Stephen, is that I'm really excited by the influx of new people that's coming into the business.
Right. Okay.
And actually, with that is coming the next generation, if you like.
Yeah.
Sorry for those Star Trek fans out there. I am a bit of a Star Trekkie. So, yeah, did you watch Picard? That was great, by the way. Definitely worth a watch if nobody's watched it yet. But genuinely, I've got these new team members coming into the business that to them, I'm a 6'2", grey bearded person in the business. Am I approachable to them? Have we got an awful lot in common? Are we going to have a sit down conversation? I'd like to think so, but actually, from their perspective, it might be a little bit more unsettling, shall we say. And what I'm really pleased to see is that there's a lot of people that's coming into the business, the new starters, the next generation that are coming in, that are actually being invited to join mental health first aid and subjects such as what we're discussing today.
Getting involved in what we're doing. Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. And for the simple reason is because it's all very well and good me standing here saying, yes, I deal with mental health first aid. I'm here to help you, da 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 da. But everybody's going to want to talk to me. And certainly when it comes down to generations, they're probably less likely to come and talk to me because we haven't got an awful lot in common. So they think, So actually, as a business, we're taking certainly a route where we've got younger members to talk to younger people, because let's be honest, Stephen, we've all got our own stresses and strains. The fact of the matter is that we've also got experience under our belts, so we can draw upon that.
Yeah.
These guys, these girls and guys that are coming into the business moving forward, they need people to talk to of their own generation as well. And
have you noticed a difference in terms of generationally as well? Do you think the younger people are far more inclined to open up and talk about their well-being than I say our generation? I know I'm older than you, but you know what I mean.
I think, to be honest with you, I think it's down to an individual. I genuinely do. I think, would I want to talk to somebody 20 years my junior about my mental health? Well, actually, I've got no issues with it. But somebody 20 years my junior may not want to talk, or look, we've all been there, haven't we? We've all been 20 years old and saying to your mum and dad, you just don't understand what I'm going through.
Yeah.
We've been there. So actually having peers of the same generation available to talk and to share experience, and of course, us as a team to be there to support them advocates as well, is really important.
Yeah. And that, right. Okay. So that's the gift that we've got then, really, isn't it? Is to share, our experience and our empathy and our ability to connect with people and share that to new people coming in and so
absolutely. And I think we can learn as a generation again, and I know this is probably a bit ageist, but the generations coming through now have more social media strains and stresses than we ever experienced.
Yeah.
And I think for me to get an understanding about that from team members helps me, and helps me in everyday life. It helps me sort of associate with my niece, my nephew, my godchildren, my friends' children, all these kind of things. I can actually appreciate what they're up against, because where you and I, it'd be a case of somebody's put a nasty post on Facebook or something. It's very different for these people, because a lot of people, and I'm not saying all, but it can almost be one of their main drivers. How many likes have I got today? Somebody turns around and says, those shoes look dreadful on you. It could really affect somebody. So actually understanding how the media, so social media affects their well-being is helping us as well moving forward.
Yeah, no, spot on. Brilliant. Now, those three things that I wrote down a bit earlier were, and clearly you're a good example of having done this. There's a phrase that I use a lot, which is about putting your own oxygen mask on first before you help others.
Absolutely.
And I mean, that's an analogy from obviously flying, and that's what they tell you to do when you get on an aeroplane, isn't it, in the safety announcement? And there's there's a technical reason for that, which I won't go into now, but that's a great analogy that, you've got to get yourself right. You've got to work on yourself if you want to be in a great position to help others. It sounds like that you've done a fair bit of that then, Matt.
I think, Stephen, from my perspective, this is something that I've worked. I've kind of lived with this mindset for probably the last 20 years.
Right.
Where I'm very lucky to be able to set my own internal weather. I know that we're never all going to wake up the same every morning with a big smile on our faces, but we need to do things to strive to make us happy or to put us in a better situation. And again, I'm not naive enough to think that everybody's possible to do that, because it's not. It's not possible. I'm very fortunate to be able to say that, but people do need to be aware that you have the power to set your own weather, but you've got to have what's around you in place and situ to help you do that. So, for instance, I woke up this morning and I thought, oh, it's Friday. It's been a short week, but the short weeks always seem longer, don't they, Stephen? and I got up and I thought, okay, let's go and get in the shower. And you have that conversation with yourself, right? Okay, mate, you have a great day today. The sun's going to shine. Um, you have a great conversation with Stephen today, talking about Menable and how we can help moving forward. So I'm actually setting that scene for me. By the time I've actually got out of the shower, I'm ready to go.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and again, I'm very fortunate to be able to say that I can do that. But actually, hoping that anybody that's listening to this podcast, I'm hoping that they just take one thing away from it. I know when I first started talking about mental health, the biggest thing that I took away from is that we've all got it.
yeah, 100%,
That was the
absolutely.
biggest thing that took
Yeah.
me, and it was quite revolutionary.
Mm-hmm.
And that was I brought that up on a conversation with the Culture Council with Jardine as well, and it was like we have a choice to set our own weather,
Mm-hmm.
and that's something that really has grown for me. That actually, if I'm in a bad place or if I'm in a bad mood, why am I in a bad mood? Find out that reason why I'm in a bad mood and try and rectify it. Can't do it always, Stephen. I'm not going to say that I can,
Yeah,
because sometimes it's exterior influences, stresses and strains of life, which we are all about. But actually, it's knowing that it's not going to define me. This issue isn't going to kill me. Fingers crossed, but ultimately, it's the strain that I'm putting on myself to do something. Like this morning, Stephen, as you know, I had some technical issues with my laptop. I didn't want to let you down. I was really excited about doing this. I got no, oh my goodness, the call's going to happen in a couple of minutes' time. I couldn't get into my laptop and got no sound. But of course, it all comes good. And the reason why it come good was because I'm no IT guru, no questions in the slightest. However, I've got an IT team that are, and they was able to go in there, fix it, so we could be sitting here today and having this conversation.
yeah,
Now, that's
yeah,
an analogy that you can use in life. If there's a problem, you may not know the answer or the way to fix it, but there are people in the world, the people in this association, and people in the next door to you that are willing to help you.
yeah,
And they might not know the answer, and you may never find the answer, but they will actually show you a route to get to where you need to go to. And
yeah,
I think that's really important, that any problem that you come across, you're not the first person to have it. You're not the first person to struggle with anxiety, but let's have a look at some techniques. Let's talk about different things that could possibly help you. And actually, moving forward, if that's not working for you, let's see where else we can move this.
yeah. Matt, that's brilliant. I mean, the other two things that I wrote down, other than the oxygen mask, were, and you've described them brilliantly, was one that, you've been there, and quite a few of us have.
Yeah,
So despite whatever mask or outward appearance we wear, it quite often, is as a result of where we've been and the experiences that we've had. And the other thing I put was, and you've just touched on it again, is, I'm a big advocate that we're talking about mental health, and particularly in the automotive industry. We're a diagnostic and fix it business. We are used to cars coming in being broken, and we find out what's wrong and we fix it. And I think to some extent we've tried to do that with people. And like you've just said, you quite often you can't fix someone else's problems, and they might want to be looking for a fix, but actually what they really need is just to know that you're there and you listen
yeah,
and you empathize and understand.
yeah, totally
And just,
agree, 100%.
yeah, that's amazing. So Matt, you've already said that you're a single guy. You've got a big
Yeah,
family, I know. So what keeps you busy outside of work then? How do you
friends and
measure your...
family.
Right,
So,
okay.
friends and family are the most important thing to me. I've got a great family, and I've got a great chosen family as well. And one of the reasons why I am where I am today, personally, and this is in an outgoing kind of gregarious character, is because I've got the support of good people. I'm lucky with that. I'm so lucky with that because I have got a phenomenal family, and I reciprocate that. But then also, my chosen family and my friends, they know me inside out, as I know them inside out. And all I can say is I've always surrounded myself with good people.
Mm,
Now, a good person, there's nothing that you can turn around about a good person and say they've got to be this, they've got to be that. It's how they make you feel,
right.
how they're there for you. Again, that's a massive importance for anybody. But anyway, coming away from that, love cars, obviously. which is a benefit.
That helps, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm quite a social butterfly, or at least I was. As I'm getting a little bit older, I'm kind of becoming, oh, there's that documentary on TV. Let's watch that, or
Yeah, you
do this,
value an
that.
evening in on your own. Yeah, I get that.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
honestly. As you get that little bit older, you start to value things. And actually, I found myself wanting to learn more as I've got older. I mean, we're all being the same. I remember when we was at school, one thing we was looking forward to was the bell at 3:30, or half term, or Christmas, or this, that, and the other, and that was something to look forward to. I think in adult life now, I'm really eager to learn, but also still need something to look forward to. And I think that's actually quite a big point. I mean, everybody that's going through a bit of a darker time, having something to look forward to does give you that light that you need.
Yeah.
Now, that could be a meal out with friends. It could be a weekend away. It could be a day down at Western Supermud. Whatever you want to do, have something to look forward to, because it's really important.
Yeah, Matt, that's brilliant. Now, as a final thought, then, you're obviously in a very good place. I mean, you've navigated, your way through the industry, and then you've said yourself you've had moments where it's not been so great, and you get all of that. If there are people around the Jardine Motors Group business that want to reach out and connect with you, what's a good way of getting hold of you? Is it okay to sort of share some contact details?
Absolutely. So if people want to get in contact with me, happily to email me. Usual Jardine Motor Group email, matt.karim, Karim, at jardinemotors.co.uk. On that, you can call me on the mobile, 07585 705 314.
I should have just said, by the way, these are going out publicly as well next week. So,
thanks for that.
That's sorry, I should have.
Well, at least we've panned out the podcast for a little bit longer than in that case.
So if you get inundated with calls, it's not my fault.
No, don't worry at all. And you know what? Genuinely, if anybody wants to have a conversation, wants to have a chat about anything that we've discussed today, I may not be able to help you with your exact issue. Mm-hmm. However, I've got contacts to networks that we can certainly help you some way and get you what you need. And I think, do you know what? Genuinely, we all know the old adage where teamwork makes the dream work, and it's true. Because we are a well-oiled machine, and actually, if one of our important components is out for some reason, we need to do the best to help them. If we can do that by having a conversation, point them in the right direction, then we're here for you. And that's not just me. That's the whole mental health first aid team. And the biggest thing that I'd want to point out, and I'm really sorry for Stephen, please don't look that there's a stigma when it comes to mental health. We need to get past this.
Definitely.
We need to get past this. There is no stigma, because actually, it's just the same as physical health. If you've got a cold, if you twisted your ankle, you're going to go to the doctors, you're going to help, you're going to ask for help with that. Don't be afraid to ask, to talk, to share moving forward.
Yeah. Wow. What a great way to finish on. Matt, you are a top bloke.
Thank you, Steve.
I thoroughly enjoyed having you on the program. How have you enjoyed being a Menable Matters guest?
I've really enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to the next invite.
I feel a Matt and Steve show coming on, or the Witten and Karim hour.
That sounds like WK. Sounds awesome. I'm up for that.
I could go on forever there, but we'll leave it at that. But you know what? Right. That's been amazing. Thank you so much, Matt. Really do appreciate it. And go on. What was you going to say?
I was just going to say thanks for your time and have a fantastic day.
You are a star. Take care. All the best.
Thanks, Stephen. Take care.
Cheers. Bye.